Welcome to The Real Story with Jeannie Ives. Thank you for listening in. Today, I have as a guest in studio, Kevin Coyne. Many of you in the suburbs may know Kevin because he runs a PAC called Safe Suburbs PAC. We're going to talk to him about that and specifically about the Safety Act. And you may think that you've heard enough about the Safety Act. Well, after this conversation, I think you will have learned even more. So welcome to the program, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So Kevin is a former Naperville City Council member. You also ran for elected office in 2020.
I did. County board.
That's right, county board. And then afterwards, after that run, you basically looked around and you said, you know, we've got something going on here. Yeah. And you started a PAC called Safe Suburbs PAC.
I did.
Can you tell us more about that PAC and why you started it?
Yeah, we started it in Naperville really in response to the riots we'd had and an uptick in crime that we were seeing in the community. And what we felt was kind of a lack of a presence or voice in support of our police and public safety. And we started with pretty modest ambitions, really just, to honor and respect those who are really being abused by wrongdoers in town that wanted to demonize our police, who've done so many great things for Naperville. So we had an event. In fact, you were one of our speakers at that very first event on the 4th of July, and we had a whole bunch of people came. And what we're gathering from the attendees was a real desire to find out, okay, who are the elected officials that we can trust to stand up for public safety? And from there, kind of a light bulb went off. Well, we could help tell you who those people are. And so from there, we created the PAC and been out there spreading the word about good people that are out there that'll stand for police and stand for law enforcement.
So that's great. So you've been able to, you start as a PAC,
Yep.
Standing up for police. And that actually was the response because in the riots of 2020, police were under attack, whether it's in Chicago, even in Naperville. And Naperville saw its own level of riots as well during the George Floyd protest movement. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of shocking that kind of violence came to our suburbs. Definitely. And, most people do align the suburbs with safety. I mean, that is one of the reasons you move out of a city and you move to the suburbs. A lot of people want to feel safe. Yeah. And so from there, though, you guys have done some really important work. And I think this is what the listeners should know and what I give you 100% credit for. And when it came to the Safety Act, the Safe Suburbs PAC, the PAC that you run, were the first people to really raise the alarm about the Safety Act. Mm-hmm. And you had this incredible event, again, on July 4th, your second year. And what happened from that?
We had a great lineup of speakers, and those speakers included Jim Glasgow, very respected, longtime Democrat state's attorney out of Will County. And he came and he wanted to focus his words on the Safety Act and what he viewed as very serious public safety concerns that he thinks are going to stem directly from that act, from making arrest procedures far more complicated and dangerous for officers, to the very unusual laws or changes in arrests, like trespass now is not an arrestable, detainable offense now. And most importantly, the elimination of bail, which he says is going to lead to hundreds of people being released from Will County's jails on January 1st, including many that have been charged with very violent crimes. So
let's pause there because I want my producer now to go ahead and play that clip for our listening audience.
Great.
Okay.
We've got a bill coming down the pike here that's going to go into effect on January 1st. It's called the Safety Act, and then the no bail bill portion of it. If that bill goes into effect, literally, Bob and I, our hands will be tied, the police officers' hands will be tied, the judges, and we'll have this, what you see in Chicago, we'll have here. I won't be able to hold anybody in jail longer than 90 days if they demand trial, and at the 90th day, they get out, no matter what crime they've committed. And then, if they don't show up for court, I can't get a warrant. I have to get a rule to show cause. Well, ask your fellow officers here if they're going to go in the inner city and try to serve a civil writ on someone charged with a triple homicide. It's not going to happen. They're not going to come back to court. It's going to be literally the end of days. And I'm working on a project to deal with it. I can't say much more than that. But you as the electorate need to demand anybody running for election in November is going to vote to repeal this bill. It will destroy the state of Illinois. I don't even understand the people who support it, why they can't realize that. I've got 640 people in the Will County Jail. all their bonds will be extinguished on January 1st. And 60 are charged with murder, and many others with violent Class X felonies.
Okay, well, that's a fair. That's an alarm bell. I mean, he literally has said that over 600 criminal suspects will be released from his jails January 1st if the Safety Act goes into effect, including 60 murders. What was the response from the crowd that day when he said that?
You know, we had a fairly politically aware crowd in the lineup, but and everybody had heard about some of the concerns about the Safety Act, but his words so crystallized really what we're talking about that they did raise a lot of eyebrows. And when we started showing clips of those comments, pretty much anybody who sees them are just, cannot believe that we're doing this in the state of Illinois. And why would we be doing this? Doesn't anyone care about public safety? So it was a very impactful speech.
So I hear he's going to be attending an event with you coming up soon. Tell our audience about that.
Yes, we're having our last Safe Suburbs event for this year. It's going to be in Joliet on October 17th at Heroes West. He's our main speaker at that event, and we also have Mayor of Joliet, Bob Odekirk, who's also former police officer, Andy Wheeler, Kane Kinky chairman, and Pat Sheehan, a Senate candidate who's also a law officer. And we're going to be spending a lot of time, again, talking about the Safety Act and doing what we can to make sure folks know how dangerous that law is going to be for everyone.
Okay, so, it's interesting because we have a similar panel, and I think our breakthrough audience knows about it. We have one on October 13th. We have a sitting judge from Will County who is in charge of the criminal court. Wow. We have Bob Berlin, the state's attorney for DuPage, the sheriff. And what's similar to your panel is the fact that you actually have people that have to deal with the Safety Act from all different aspects, from an active duty police officer to a sitting state's attorney. And so all of them, the entire public safety chain of command is essentially saying this act is unworkable. So how does something like this get passed? Because from what I can tell, it appears that the prominent Democrats that represent Naperville all passed it.
I think one of the most concerning things that I have found going through this election cycle is that even virtually all Democrat candidates and incumbents, even those in Springfield that even voted for it, seem to acknowledge how radical the bill is, but they didn't feel that they had a choice politically because of how vocal the activist wing of their party was on this issue and making penalties for crime softer, and they felt they had no choice but to support it. To me, that's not a very good excuse when we're talking about public safety. I mean, politicians, here and there, you got to do what you got to do, but when you're talking about public safety, that is not something that should be politicized, and that is exactly what they've done.
So what's been the response in your own community in Naperville to the Safety Act from its political leaders?
Well, one of my last actions on city council before my term ended was to propose a safety resolution right before it was voted on to oppose it. And that resolution failed 4-5, but went down by one vote. We came back again after...
We like to name names. Who voted to oppose a resolution opposing the Safety Act?
It was Councilman Benny White, John Crumman, Judy Broadhead. It was the five Democrats on the council.
Okay.
And then now, going back, we brought it back, and it came forward again, and this time it passed. After, unfortunately, it had already been implemented, but we basically proposed a resolution that we would tell Springfield that Naperville doesn't appreciate the law. We'd like it at minimally amended or repealed. And this time it passed 5-3. One of the councilmen refused to vote on it. So 5-3. Again, unfortunately, a very partisan discussion on the law. The Democrats, again, don't feel comfortable opposing that activist wing of their party.
Well, it's interesting because really the first responsibility of government is to keep her people safe. Mm-hmm. And this should be a nonpartisan issue, and we should be listening to the experts. So 100 out of 102 states' attorneys oppose legislation like this, and they're the ones who actually are the experts in the field. Yeah. What does it tell you about the politics that are going on when legislation's passed? Shouldn't they listen to the experts?
And isn't that kind of the right? We always get blamed that we don't listen to the experts. That's clearly what they're doing here, because the experts in law enforcement and public safety have by and large been uniform in opposing this law. And I think what we have seen very clearly is really a radicalization of a lot of the left and their party. and to the point that their even more moderate officials don't feel comfortable going against them.
So, from my understanding, it appears that the criminals have the upper hand when it comes to our judicial system. And it's almost like, we're a sanctuary for criminals in this state.
Yeah.
So there's one incident that I found out about yesterday. Somebody who I know very well. Mm-hmm. He and his wife were traveling back in separate automobiles from Northwest Indiana, where they have a second home. And she was ahead of him in the vehicle, and he's listening to the traffic report, and it's saying, hey, there's a police incident on exit 5. Beware. He's like, wow, what's going on? And he knew that his wife was about 15 minutes ahead of him. Well, come to find out, there had been a stolen vehicle coming out of Northwest Indiana, and the perpetrator was speeding along that interstate, 8094, and he started to use the shoulder, the left shoulder, and he basically ran out of shoulder room, sideswiped this gentleman's wife, which means her car stopped, hit another couple vehicles. They all stopped. The police were on the right side of the road. They get over to the left side of the road, and the woman is no further from me to you to where the perpetrator is literally, his car flips onto its side. He's trying to now climb out of the passenger side door and has his arm extended with a gun in the air. Oh. This is a real story. Just happened.
Wow.
Just happened last week.
Yeah.
And the police come, they get the whole situation under control. As you can imagine, the woman's terrified. And the tow truck driver says, yeah, this happens all the time. What they're trying to do is they're trying to flee across the state line because they would prefer to be arrested in Illinois if they're going to be caught at all, because they know they'll be released. That is the result of the public policies that Illinois has, and the attitude they have towards the criminals. You're going to just be let out.
I know. Well, one of the greatest concerns I've heard from, we've been obviously talking to a lot of people in police forces around really the state at this point. They're concerned that, we've already seen upticks in crime and those types of incidents out here, certainly more than we used to going back years. But criminals, by and large, still know you get let out pretty fast in Cook County when you get arrested. If you get caught on the DuPage side of the border and have to deal with Berlin and Mendrick, you're probably not getting out anytime soon. You're going to have to face real repercussions for your actions. They are going to now make Cook County's policies of basically catch and release the mandate law of the land throughout the state. So criminals aren't going to have that deterrent and aren't going to have that very significant reason not to come here, because they're probably going to be caught and released just like they would in Cook County, because that's going to be the law.
So when you talk to ordinary patrol officers, what do they tell you is going on out there?
A lot of issues are going on. There's a huge morale issue. They're tired of being demonized. Violence against police officers nationally is at an unprecedented peak, and their families are worried about them even having the job anymore. So there's a huge morale and safety concern going on. But also this Safety Act, I know, is contributing to retirements. People don't want to, those in law enforcement.
Well, first of all, one of the tenets of the Safety Act is the fact that you can do anonymous reporting of behavior that they think that they observed on police officers. So you're just basically can come up with anything and hurt their record.
The general sentiment of the law is not to trust police officers. It's really an anti-law enforcement, pro-criminal bill. We want to make crime easier to commit in the state of Illinois by passing this law, which doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but that's where we are.
Wow. So they've got to be appreciative of your work with Safe Suburbs. What's the next step? You guys have done such incredibly important work in raising awareness on the Safety Act. And again, without you having Glasgow in for your July 4th event and him saying what he said, and then that clip being played over and over again, nobody would really understand what was going on with the Safety Act. So what's your next step? This has gotten you a lot of publicity about your PAC. Yeah. I think it's great. What do you want to do with this in the end?
We're doing a lot of different things. We are doing what we can to support our endorsed candidates with financially to the extent that we can, but also with social media exposure. messaging on the Safety Act and other public safety issues we're doing a great deal of on social media and email, and letting people know that we quite literally are going to have the most liberal and pro-criminal criminal justice system in America. Nothing in America has ever been seen anything like what we're about to undertake here with that Safety Act. And people really need to know. And there still is, I appreciate your words about the Glasgow video getting around, but there still is a lack of an awareness. And people kind of close down to the Republican and Democrat fighting over things like, such as this and others, that they don't know who to trust. We're trying to come out there as a nonpartisan voice, which we are nonpartisan. There have been some Democrats that we've supported, and letting people know, they got to take this serious. So it's really going to be awareness on public policy matters and supporting our candidates.
Right. That's great. I mean, tell us, have people reached out from across the state to talk to you about this?
Oh my gosh. I mean, again, we started this really as a Naperville thing.
Yeah,
and
as
soon as we started endorsing, hundreds of candidates have approached us for endorsements, for help. We've gotten at least 200 candidates have put in their questionnaire to get an endorsement. So it's really gotten around. So we hope to just keep building and really have this apparatus that's going to help pro-police candidates this year and moving forward.
It's remarkable because one of the things that we talk about here at Breakthrough Ideas is like you have to get local.
Yeah.
You're right. Things that happen locally matter.
Yeah.
And it's also a way to take back your government from its overreach to begin with. Yeah. And you've actually done this. I mean, you started very local, but you're now getting a statewide presence.
Yeah.
Here's what I find interesting, though. What about the papers? Mm-hmm. Have they talked to you? Have they showed up for your events? Are they paying attention at all?
Yes and no.
Okay.
We've gotten some press coverage. NCTV has been good about taping our events.
Well, that's a public television, and it's in your local area. Okay, but still, that's good.
Mainstream, not so much. Yeah, no. Not as much.
No, so the Sun-Times, Chicago Tribune, they want to,
I've been quoted a couple times. I got called for a quote probably twice, looking for perspectives. And the Naperville Sun, again.
Okay.
But not Chicago papers.
No, not at all. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, it does feel like the media has been pretty biased on this topic, and it's amazing what you as a local organization have done to raise awareness, and yet this is a bill. We're now in 2022. The bill was passed over 18 months ago in January of 2021, and very limited coverage. Yeah. At the time of its passage, really no coverage because it passed in the dark of the night with just a few hours. And then not hardly any coverage until, honestly, you guys kind of blew it up in July. There was light coverage of it, if at all.
I think that's true, and I think we've shown the power of social media a little bit and how that can maybe close money gaps in a meaningful way, because I can tell you when I go on my social media feeds, I feel like the Safety Act is like every third post, if not more. There's a lot of people out there talking about it now.
Well, it should be, because what's interesting, the local media, other than Naperville TV, haven't covered it. But the national media has. Yeah. They've talked about the Purge Act.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
It's gotten big.
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan just had it on his, talked about it on his podcast. He's got the most popular podcast ever.
Yeah.
I mean, we look like buffoons here in the state of Illinois.
Yeah. It does seem like the media is very much connected also to the party in charge at times. And I think all of us that are active in this have started to see that.
Yeah, it's just remarkable. So there's been a call for, of course, the Democrats' response is, oh, well, we're going to tweak it after the election. We'll do in veto session, we're going to do some trailer bills to fix it. If you've been following this, do you know what they intend to fix?
I mean, when they say tweak it, they're not talking about the really meaningfully concerning issues, mainly the elimination of bail. So basically you're caught and released. That is not being discussed by any of them as being one of their tweaks. And in fact, a lot of them, just Chris Welch recently and Stava Murray, representative in this area, she came in public testimony at City Council to tell us how great it was going to be that there'd be no more bail and everybody be getting released, and it was this great equity thing. I don't think it's great for equity or anything else. How is it good for anyone for communities to be less safe? That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense regardless of your race.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
So Chris Welch also got caught at having an event, and Tom DeVore happened to show up. He's the Republican nominee for Attorney General, and he was able to ask a question, and he asked it about the Safety Act and and what are you going to do to change it and all that. And he said, well, we've already had 3 trailer bills. So I started to kind of look into that. It appears to me, and I'm not done figuring out what their 3 trailer bills were, he said he tweaked it. It was all about funding.
Yeah.
So again, they had a lot of unfunded mandates on police that were going to essentially bankrupt some of these local police departments. And you can't think about Naperville being the 4th largest city in the state, who may have a lot more wealth to buy body cams and keep up with all that technology that's required and mandated in the Safety Act. You've got a lot of small police departments that literally this Safety Act and its mandates would bankrupt them. Yeah. So there's also the funding issue as well, and I'm going to get to that on another thing too. But essentially, they were going to the tweaks that I heard that they did in their quote unquote trailer bills were all about, well, we'll just give these municipalities more money to actually do their job since we made these unfunded mandates. Yeah. But that's not changing the real problems with the Safety Act at all. It's just spending more taxpayer money when actually in some of these smaller police departments probably wasn't needed. Or they can make their own decisions if their local community wants body cams. Not. I think personally, body cams provide a protection for both police and victims, or police and perpetrators. I think it also keeps the police, their record is out there as well. Yeah. So that's one thing. Now, I also heard from somebody who works in the court system in Will County that because you don't have cash bail, you could literally be looking at taking away from their county budget for prosecution, $3 to $4 million.
Yeah,
that's a huge hit, and in smaller counties, it's going to be significant.
The financial impact also hasn't gotten much discourse in the media. Kane County, they just were talking about it's going to be multi millions in additional expense and manpower, retraining. The burden on the court system to have to you have to process everybody within 48 hours that gets arrested. That is a huge burden on the court, and you get out of the collars. They don't even have, some of these don't even have full-time judges. So you're talking about an enormous statewide expense that, again, unfunded mandate in terms of how anyone's going to deal with this. But yeah, it's going to be on top of everything. Taxpayers are going to pay more for less safety. So again, I ask, how does that make any sense?
It makes no sense at all. And not to mention, I also like to just really hone in on the fact that in Illinois, why are we doing this in Illinois? Yeah. Indiana doesn't have it. They seem to be doing just fine.
Yeah.
In terms of crime statistics, relatively, it's like, why do we think that we need this here? We already have laws on the books. We're just not locking up the criminals to begin with. I mean, it's catch and release already in Cook County. We know where that ends up. You've got nearly 40 felons that have been released only to reoffend seriously, either murder or attempted murder.
Yeah.
And that has affected well over 100 victims. So, I mean,
the answer is a political one. Again, it's just how influential this activist, anti-police movement has become in the party in charge here. And again, even their moderate Democrats, I have found, are not capable of standing against them. And that's how you end up with these really terrible, extremist, radical policies like we're apparently about to undertake.
Great. So. Well, like I said, I think that people, if they listen to this interview, they just learned a whole lot more about the Safety Act.
I hope so. Yeah. Check out our website. We regularly update SafeSuburbsUSA.com, and our fan page is blowing up all the time. Same name. Check it out.
Okay, SafeSuburbsUSA.com.
Yep.
Okay, Kevin Coyne, thanks so much for joining me on this podcast.
Definitely. Great.
Terrific.